guys, welcome to Bastion Time. I am your host, Bastion. This is Nintendo News. Let's get to that news. First of all, yes, Nintendo has a new president, and yes, I haven't covered that until now. His name is Tatsumi Kimishima, and the reason why it's taken me a while to cover it is because, frankly, I didn't have much to say at first. I mean, we knew nothing about this guy. He was not one of the names that we have ever really heard about from Nintendo, from within Nintendo of Japan. He's not Miyamoto, he's not Tezuka, he's a name that I have never heard before, so I didn't know anything about him, so I wanted to take some time to try to learn a thing or two about him so I could have something useful to say other than Nintendo has a new president, because of course they do, it's just who is this guy? And now we know a little bit about him. It's that originally Mr. Iwata held two roles. He was both president of Nintendo and the CEO of Nintendo. And it might seem to the layman like those are two similar things, but they're not. They're two very different things. And he, the new president of Nintendo, used to be the CEO of Nintendo at one point before Mr. Iwata took on that role as well. So that's one thing, is that he held the role of CEO of Nintendo, which is a big role for a while. He then, after that point, took on some smaller roles, or maybe not smaller, but less exciting titles. He even worked over in Nintendo of America for a while, so he's got some familiarity with bringing games from Japan into America. That's basically what one of his roles was for quite a while. So it's very interesting that they selected him, of all people. I did kind of honestly think they would select Mr. Miyamoto, and even though maybe Mr. Miyamoto doesn't have the experience to be the president of a company, that it just felt right. Like, he's the guy who created Mario and Zelda, for goodness sake. He deserves that kind of position. But there is the rumor that Mr. Miyamoto has said he has zero interest in being president of Nintendo or CEO or any of that business. He just likes focusing on the games. So now that he's no longer the temporary president or temporary co-president, he's been moved into a new position that's brand new, that's been created for him, called a creative fellow. And he basically oversees all of the creative aspects of Nintendo. And then that other fellow, who was filling in as his co-president, temporary co-president, after Mr. Iwata's passing, is now the technical fellow. So Mr. Miyamoto's focusing on games, basically. This other guy's focusing on hardware, and the new president of Nintendo is focusing on the business aspect. So it sounds like they've got all the bases covered with all of the right people now. So what Mr. Kimishima has said is that he's not going to do anything dramatically different than what Mr. Iwata was doing. He's still going to be focusing on bringing Nintendo to mobile platforms, which was Mr. Iwata's newest legacy, and so we'll have to wait and see what kinds of new ideas he brings to the table with regard to Nintendo's future, but it's kind of exciting. If you want to read more about him, there is a link in the description. Our next story is about Mr. Tezuka, who's the executive producer behind the Mario series these days. And he said that Super Mario Maker actually started out as something that has nothing to do with making Mario games, but instead was going to be a Wii U version of Mario Paint. Now, you might not be familiar with Mario Paint. It is a game I definitely had. It's for the Super Nintendo, and it comes with a little mouse and a mouse pad that you plug into your Super Nintendo, and then you draw, and you can animate, and you can make music, and basically what I remember using it for was to make quick, short little animation scenes, and it was a lot of fun, and so they thought, the Wii U is the perfect device for that. You don't need a mouse or whatever, you can just draw directly onto the gamepad. So it started out that way, but then Mr. Miyamoto said, it should be something grander than a Wii U version of Mario Paint. It should be something else that's bigger than that. And thus Super Mario Maker was born. So now we know the origin story of that. It's interesting to think that instead of Super Mario Maker, we could have gotten Mario Paint Wii U? That is odd. Anyways, that is it for this episode of Nintendo News. See you guys tomorrow for more news. Bye, guys.